What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is because people get to know you, they get to see you.
But, you know, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development programme I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated. Yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. On this episode of ScaleUp Radio, I talk with Jon Hope, who is the CEO of Billy Chip. And this is a really inspiring conversation that we have. It's also very heart-wrenching, as you'll hear some of the reasons for founding the charity, but also the KIC, or the Community Interest Company that is Billy Chip. And really, it is a fascinating story. It all sorts of things in here relating to whatever kind of business that we're trying to run and set up. But if you've ever wondered about setting up a charity or a not-for-profit or a community interest company or even a CIO, if you're wondering what all of those terms mean, then they'll all be covered within the conversation that we have and the kind of business model that is appropriate for Jon Hope with Billy Chip. But it's such a great idea. We also talk about how and discover how Paloma Faith has had an influence on the business and how he's managed to have conversations right through from McDonald's. He's been interviewed on the BBC Red Sofa. All sorts of great stories, and I met Jon at the Great British Entrepreneur Awards earlier on, in fact last year in 2022. So what a great story this is, one that I think you're going to thoroughly enjoy. So let's go over to Jon and hear the rest of his story. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. I'm here with Jon Hope, who's the CEO of something called Billy Chip. So welcome, Jon.
Thank you.
Would you like to tell us what Billy Chip is all about?
Yeah, so Billy Chip is a safe, secure currency to help people directly support rough sleepers and homeless people with a way of being able to get them some sustenance, a hot drink or a cold drink on a hot day, without the fear of their donation being misused for drugs or alcohol. And just really because, we live in a society now where cash is almost a thing of the past. Certainly since the pandemic, more and more places don't accept cash. And I think more and more of us find ourselves reaching for some cash in our pocket and realize actually we don't carry it anymore. So the Billy Chip is a token that you can purchase from coffee shops, cafes, takeaways, and hopefully soon more retail outlets like supermarkets. And you can pass that token on to someone you see sleeping rough, and they can then take it into any of those outlets and redeem it for something which is going to benefit them.
Sounds absolutely brilliant. And how do you want to tell us the story of how this came about?
Well, I'd like to say it was my idea, but then I'd be lying to you. So, it came about. My daughter, Megan, at the age of about 16, had glandular fever, which then turned into something called ITP. And I can't even start to try and pronounce what ITP stands for, but it's a medical condition which attacks your immune system. And she was 16 years old. So just at that time of life when you're leaving school and things are all starting to change for the better for you. And poor Meg ended up in and out of our local hospital, in and out of hospital up in London, trying all sorts of different experimental procedures and medicines to actually put her condition into remission, I guess, is the best way of explaining it. And through the 2 years that she was going through these different medical procedures, she decided that she would try and turn it into a positive and also raise some money for the Bristol Royal Infirmary, which was our local hospital, so that the consultant that was looking after her could change the way in which the NHS approached the care that they were giving people. Because of the way we're sort of structured, they very much focused on trialing the cheapest drug first, even though it was less likely to have a positive outcome. Okay. So she sort of suffered a little bit like a guinea pig. Eventually, she ended up having an operation, having her spleen removed, and that put her into remission. So Meg raised, I think it was just about £80,000 in the end for the BRI, and managed to get a new procedure and a new process put in place. And I, at the time, was a sales director of a renewable energy company and used to travel around the country and always had pockets full of cash for parking meters and toll bridges. And every day I used to come home, I used to chuck my change into a big pot in my office.
Yeah. I've got one of those.
Yeah. And Billy, my son, being at the time of age about 19, 20, questioned me one day on what's that big pot of money doing in your office? And I said, I don't know really, Billy. I said, it's money out of my trousers, when I come home from work. I will probably end up giving it to charity. At which point, as our kids often do, putting us right and correcting us, he said, I won't use the exact words he used, but he said, that's ridiculous. Why would you step over someone who's cold and hungry in the street when you've got a pocket full of change and bring that home, and then you're going to give it to a charity anyway? That's sort of, a bit ass backwards, shall we say.
Yep.
And I said, yeah, you're right. And I totally understand where you're coming from with that comment. But I was always brought up, and I lived in Bath, and we had it's quite a touristy area, Bath. They get a lot of, certainly a lot of American and a lot of Japanese tourists there. And the homeless situation back in the sort of 90s seemed to be a blight on the city. And was affecting tourism. So there was quite a big public campaign from the police and from charities and the council to say, look, stop giving beggars, as we used to call them, money, because they just spend it all on drugs and alcohol. It just makes the whole situation worse. The best thing you could do is give that money to a charity. They know the best thing to do with it.
Yeah.
And I said to Billy, that's the narrative I was sort of brought up with. And people of my generation, because I'm really old, you're not going to change that. You won't make people change that perception that they have. Whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whether or not people are entitled, if they're in that situation, to spend any money they're given on something which is deemed to be negative, alcohol, cigarettes, or, some form of drugs. That is the way of the world, and you're not going to change that. That just isn't something that you can change. And he said to me in a very simple, matter-of-fact way, which sort of knocked me off my feet a little bit, but he did always used to come up. He did have a very entrepreneurial spirit, I guess, for seeing problems and seeing things and having ideas on how we could just make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you could quite easily resolve that if places like McDonald's and Costa Coffee had an interchangeable token that you could buy for a couple of quid that could just be used for food and drink.
Yeah.
To which I said, gosh, that's a really good idea. I can't believe that you've come up with that. But also, now that you've put that out there, I can't believe that isn't something that already exists. And he said, well, it doesn't. So then we set about how we could do that and how we could make a change. And at the time, he was a non-emergency ambulance driver.
Right.
So he used to take people that used to require regular visits to hospital for treatments and things like that. He used to do like transport, patient transport for them. And he decided that he was going to, he'd had sort of enough of that, and he was going to go off traveling with his friend, and they had organized to go diving and in Koh Tao, which is an island just off of Thailand, where a relation had a diving center, and they had a plan that they were going to go off. They were going to spend 6 months there getting all their diving qualifications, and then look at the rest of the world and the rest of their future and, what they could do. But I was saying to him, you really should put some time and energy into the Billy Chip. It wasn't called the Billy Chip at the time, but this token idea. And he said, yeah, I will do when I get back. But, my ambition is to go and learn to be a scuba diving instructor right now. So Billy went off in March 2018 and was there for 4 days. And unfortunately got involved in a road traffic accident and lost his life.
Goodness me. Yeah.
Which, was very hard for me, Sarah, and Megan to deal with. And very difficult to know really how you even navigate a path from that position for the rest of your life, and what you're going to do, what your focus is going to be, and I guess sort of survival instinct kicks in, and we were in a bit of a position where we didn't know whether or not to go over to the island, because there was a big support network. Like I said, there was relations there, and they owned the diving center. And there was a lot of trust for the culture and for the people that we had on the island. We had a lot of people back here as well that needed support. So it was a very difficult decision to know whether to go there straight away or whether to, support people here. But what was weird, Kevin, was how you have to consider social media in all these things, which probably sounds crazy. But it's a real thing. And news spreads really fast. There's an awful lot of disinformation that goes out, and we sort of had to manage that process. And it was taken out of our hands, really. Someone decided that there should be like a fundraiser for Billy.
Okay.
And I think when there's an outpouring of grief, I think people do tend to feel that they need to do something positive.
Yeah.
And we felt that this money just arrived. There was a few £1,000s was raised quite quickly. So then we had another thing to think about, like what do we do with this, and how do we put it to use, and how do we I guess spend it in the best way, and the way that would represent Billy and his life and what his key interests were. At 20 years old, he was very much into cars, drum and bass, going out and enjoying himself. And we thought, well, the right thing would be to give the money to the paramedics that looked after him at the scene of the accident, and try and put something in place to support anyone else who found themselves in our position.
Yeah.
But then there were things that made that complicated. It's a small island. With all small little islands, it's a lot of corruption that goes on these islands, and it became quite difficult. So we were in a bit of a crossroads, really. And my a work colleague of mine bought Sarah, my wife, and myself tickets to go and see Paloma Faith. And we went to this concert, and I think, from memory, I think it was sort of maybe in the May time, and we'd lost Billy in the March. And she was amazing. She's absolutely great entertainer. But not only is she a singer, she's a bit of a raconteur as well, and tells great stories and stories with a lot of meaning behind them as well. About all sorts of social issues, the environment, and one of the things she touched on was homelessness. Okay. And she told a story of a guy that sleeps under a railway bridge at the bottom of the road where she lives in London. And she was saying about how she always says hello to this guy and talks to him because the isolation that he must feel being homeless, being on the streets, and, predominantly being ignored by people who often look in the opposite way. And all of this was ringing bells with me because I'm thinking, oh, that's me, just keep looking at the pavement and walk by and just hope that I don't hear them ask if I can help them or spare any change. And she explained how she'd gone and spoken to this guy at the bottom of a road, and he said, I've not spoken to anyone since I spoke to you last time you came by. And she said, I've been off on tour for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You've not spoken to anyone for 2 weeks? And he said, oh, no, but, that's the norm. I didn't realise it was 2 weeks. And then she was talking about this, that, and the other. And it was like listening to Billy. It was exactly the same thing as Billy had said. He had a real sort of connection for homeless people's plight. But ever since he was a small kid, he always, if Sarah took him shopping, he was always asking awkward questions like, where do they live? How are they going to be safe at night if they stay there? And all those sorts of questions as a parent. You think, oh, please help. I don't know where to go with this. And we got in the car after watching Paloma Faith, and, Sarah and I laughed and cried. And I think people probably thought we were on drugs because of all the emotion, I think, through losing Billy and being at this concert, which felt weird. Are you supposed to go to a concert ever again after, you go through such a trauma? But I said to Sarah in the car, Billy had this amazing idea. And I'd completely forgotten about it because, like I said, he was always coming up with great ideas and had quite an entrepreneurial streak to the way he thought about things. And she said, that's just such a great idea. We, perhaps we could use some of that money to look at doing something like that. Mm-hmm. And from that conversation, we involved Megan, our daughter, in it, and we thought the best thing we could do would be to actually trial it and see in Bristol, our hometown, whether or not coffee shops wanted to be involved with it. Was it something that they were really interested in doing? Would the general public support it? And do they feel like I felt? Because you don't know. You've got your own mind, haven't you? Your own mindset on things, and you don't know whether or not other people feel the same. So we did a bit of a test model with it, and it just took off. It just went crazy. It ended up on social media. That then got picked up by ITV. The local news did a feature on it. Then the BBC did a feature on it. Then that got more views than Greta Thunberg and David Attenborough, at which point I thought, hello, we might be onto something here. We ended up one of the top news stories online of 2019. And then we got invited to the BBC to go onto the red sofa and explain what we were trying to do with the newly named Billy Chip. And from that point, things went really mad. I remember the journey home from Manchester back to Bristol on the train, and Sarah, Megan, and I didn't speak to each other because our phones were just going crazy. We had ASDA saying, we want to support this. We had Co-op saying, we want to get involved. What can we do? Yeah. So we were then in a bit of a position where we thought, well, great, we've opened this can of worms. We've got no business. We've got no charity. We've got no structure to any of this. We've just done a bit of a trial. And it was also one of those, I think, Kevin, where is this because it's a great idea, or is there a lot of empathy because of what's happened? And and trying to really understand what we had, and there was so much goodwill for it. And I thought, people have businesses and run businesses for 20 years trying to get into ASDA, and they never get across the door. And I've got,
you got them coming to you.
Just been bought by Walmart for, like, I can't remember how much it was, 2.5 billion or something, and they're knocking on our door. So I decided, not one of my best decisions in my life, I have to say, but I decided to go back to the two business owners that I work for and say, hey, look, I've got to take this opportunity to try and do something for me, for my survival, I guess, because my world's completely changed and my love for my career is diminished rapidly. It's gone, and I want to put all my time and energy into this. And they very generously said, well, tell you what, you do whatever you need to do, but leave in March. And this was the February, sort of January, February time. So that was what we did. We went off on holiday at the end of March, because I knew when we got back, it was going to be full steam ahead, trying to set up this business and trying to roll it out. And there were lots of jokes and laughs when we were on holiday about the shortage of toilet rolls in the UK. And, there's a pandemic thing coming.
Yes.
So I left my job, and the following week, the world closed, basically, for the best part of the next 2 years. So
is that why you're saying it wasn't one of your best decisions? Or
well, my wife certainly didn't think it was one of my best decisions. So that was quite a challenging time, to be honest with you, for everyone. And knowing what the future was going to hold, were people going to have any concerns about homeless people anymore? And then one of the first things I sort of read in connection with homeless people was, great, the government have resolved the issue of homelessness now, and all homeless people are being put up in secure accommodation. And then there were all these other articles going, well, if they managed to do it now, why couldn't they blimmin' do it before? And I'm thinking, great, I've left my job to try and help the homeless people, and now there are no homeless people. And this is a great turnaround, and it's a really positive thing. But it sort of left me with a bit of a white elephant. But as we all know, it was a really temporary thing. Yeah. And sadly, the situation is worse now than it was pre-pandemic. And the state of the economy and the state of the cost of living for so many people has put many, many, many more thousands of people right on the breadline, and in a very vulnerable position. So
how did you go about then trying to get some control over it? You mentioned, you'd got the phone was ringing off the hook, and I know then the pandemic hit, but how did you decide to set up the business? What structure did you use for setting up the business, for example, and then starting to get control over some of the plans moving forward?
Well, I thought we needed a charity, because I thought, not knowing much about charity, in fact, not knowing anything really about charity, if I'm completely honest, I knew, or I had a belief that there are tax benefits. There are ways of getting funding if you're a charity. You could access a lot more routes to grants. And when you're taking a punt on something like a blue poker chip, and trying to develop something completely new, I was thinking grants. From my understanding, grants were the way to go, because grants don't need paying back like loans need paying back. So I thought the best way we could do that would be a charity. It's gonna give us the officialness and the rubber stamp and everything without us having to explain everything over and over again. If you've got that charity number, it's going to open loads of doors. So we started that process. And to be fair, I think we probably started that process before the pandemic hit. But it's a long, arduous, difficult process. Throw into the mix with that, we've now got coronavirus. So no one's in an office, no one's picking up the phone. Everyone's worried about their nan and their own health. And everything else has really gone out the window. So it took a long time to get any sort of meaningful communication going backwards and forwards. And also for all the right reasons, because obviously there's a lot of sort of due diligence that needs to be done. They don't give out charity numbers willy-nilly. And I also think there is rightfully a kind of perception that when you go through a tragic situation and grief, and I think it's recognised that it's not the natural order of things, and losing a child is the worst experience you can have. That, let's not beat around the bush. If you lose a parent or a partner, someone close to you, it's very challenging. But to lose someone out of the natural order of things makes that whole thing very impactful. And many people want to do something good, and the first thing they go to is charity and raising money. So I think in our application, we probably put in something along, the story of losing Billy, and quite rightfully, I think, as that goes across someone's desk at the charity commission, there's, it's almost like dead child syndrome. Somebody else has lost someone, they want to set up a thing. We have thousands of these applications every week. But what I felt was actually, it was Billy's idea to create this, and whether he's here or whether he's not, the actual business model of what he wants to do is phenomenal. Because the token system doesn't only give a safe and secure way to the general public to be able to help a rough sleeper, it also generates a profit through the way in which the chips are redeemed and recirculated. And that business model profit, it can then be given to other organizations that know what they're doing. Because I will profess, I don't know the first thing about resolving homelessness as a global issue. That's not what we set up to do. We set up to try and provide a mechanism to give a bit of kindness and compassion and tools to people who, let's face it, people are inherently good. We wouldn't have made it this long as a species if we weren't good, kind, and and I think we forget it a lot of the time. I think we focus way too much on negative stuff. We don't bring positive things and good things because they don't sell papers.
So how does that business model work then?
So the way it works for an outlet is they sign up to a Billy Chip account through our website, and we provide them with what we call a Billy Chip starter pack, which has 25 Billy Chips, which are poker chips, in there, and some point of sale material, and most importantly, a window sticker, so that homeless people know, without having to enter the premises and potentially face rejection, they know that they're part of the scheme, and they know they're going to get a warm welcome and access to a hot or cold takeaway drink is a minimum, but many outlets offer more stuff, or take multiple tokens to facilitate higher priced items.
Get a meal or something like that.
Absolutely. So the way in which the scheme works is sort of a business model is we provide the chips up front free of charge. At the end of the month, you report back on how many chips you've sold and how many chips you've redeemed. We invoice £2, which is the sell price of each Billy chip, to get our revenue back. And we credit that invoice with £1 for every chip that's been redeemed. So the coffee shop then gets their item covered and a bit of profit. Because I think we all know that a cup of coffee don't cost, £1. Even with all the lighting and someone to serve it and all the rest of it. So there's a bit of a margin in there for the business operating it. It's a way that they can provide their corporate social responsibility, which is a bit of a buzz thing at the moment, without any additional cost to their business. It's great for their customers to see that they're trying to support the local community. And it's just a good thing, isn't it? If we can all just do it. I think my take on it is, if we all did a tiny little bit, that net result of that is a massive change and a massive difference. And that's what we're trying to create with the Billy Chip. So from the process of them reporting back their sales and redemptions, we understand their stock holding, because the Billy Chip's interchangeable. So you can buy a Billy Chip in Scotland, you can give it to a homeless person in London, they can spend it in Bristol, in any outlets. And the other great thing is it provides choice, because like everyone else, there are homeless people that are celiac or gluten intolerant or lactose intolerant or vegan or vegetarian. And some of those things are lifestyle choices. Some of those things are health issues. And do you know what? If I sold a Billy Chip for every time I spoke to someone and they said, I always buy them a cup of coffee, but I won't give them any money, or I'll always go and get a sandwich. How do you know that they want a sandwich? How do you know they drink coffee? You don't. So the Billy Chip means that they've got a choice of what they want to meet their dietary needs. They can spend it in the outlet they want to spend it in, and they can spend it when they want to spend it, and use it to meet their needs rather than fulfill someone else's gifting, I suppose. So
and then
that's how the business model works. That in turn generates a profit. All of our profit then goes to our charity foundation that we did eventually set up. Right. And that charity foundation gives grants to other organizations and charities working to combat homelessness and rough sleeping, but on a smaller scale, I guess, on a scale of like project specific stuff, rather than it going into a big pot for the big homeless charities. And the other great thing is, the way we've set that up is we can ring fence the profit generated from certain outlets. So let's say Greggs, for example, if they wanted to, all of Greg's profit from operating the Billy Chip can be ring fenced, and Greg's can signpost that off to the organisations or the projects that they want to support. And likewise, we can do it regionally as well. So all the Billy Chips sold in Bristol, all of that profit from those outlets just supports projects in Bristol. And we've supported Suicide Prevention, which is an amazing organisation who do sort of outreach work and patrols through the city at the suicide hotspots and support people that have got mental health issues and other problems. We've also supported Street Vet, which is an amazing organisation, which is 400 plus volunteer vets that work on a rota across all the cities in the UK to give support and treatment to rough sleepers' pets. I say pets. I think there's one parrot. Everyone else has got a dog. Someone's got a parrot. And that was really interesting as well, Kevin, because going back to my old narrative and my time growing up and being told homeless people only have dogs because they get more money.
Oh, yeah.
And all of this sort of stuff. And I thought, good luck to them if that's the case. They always seem to have really well-behaved dogs, and those dogs always seem to be really connected to those people. And there seems to be, a lot of love and affection that goes on between that relationship. So good luck to them. But after speaking to the lady that runs Street Vet, she told me some amazing statistics. And one that always really gets me is 93% of the people sleeping rough that have got a dog had that dog before they became homeless.
Oh, right.
And some of the other key points are addiction is the fourth reason why you're going to become homeless. The first one is affordability. The second one is a breakdown in relationships. And the other thing to sort of take into consideration is, even if you can afford to pay your rent, as a single person, you try finding a rental property for single occupancy where they will allow you to have a pet.
Right. Because
the private landlord market doesn't exist for allowing pets in multi-occupancy type buildings. And social housing, they don't really focus at all on single occupancy because they don't get the right returns on their investment. So these people have lost everything, and all they've got left is that dog. And I don't know if you're an animal lover, but
we're a dog family. Yeah.
Yeah, we're a dog family as well, and we got 3 dogs, and they're all very much a part of the family, if you know what I mean. And the thought of losing everything in life and then losing your dog as well, which is the only connection, the only thing you've got, you can understand how some people would make a choice to keep the dog and sleep on the streets rather than be in a flat on their own, and know that they've lost that dog and that relationship. So we felt that was very important to support them as well. So we were lucky enough to be involved with a program that Street Vet were rolling out, where they were training hostel staff to make the hostel what they call pet safe. So just giving them some pointers and some things like that. So we supported them with that rollout, and we've just this last month, the charity signed off on quite a sizable donation to a Bristol-based charity called Help Bristol's Homeless, where they have created a container village with old shipping containers where they convert them. They're amazing. What they do is absolutely incredible. They end up looking like a travel lodge inside.
Yeah, I've seen something about it. I didn't realize it was to do with homeless, but I've seen something along those lines. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. So the guy that runs that, a guy called Jasper, runs Help Bristol's Homeless, and they have these pods where they can give people temporary accommodation and support to get them back on their feet, so that they can progress with their lives and hopefully leave their homelessness situation behind them. So what Billy Chip's done, like I said, just recently signed off, is to finance one of those pods for people to live in. So we can demonstrate that the whole business model of the Billy Chip and how your £2 donation gets you a token where you can give someone some support directly, but also there's a wider support mechanism that we're creating for connections through different homeless organizations and different charities. So, and if we can get the Billy Chip to pre-pandemic levels, where we were seeing, 1 Billy Chip per outlet being sold per day, which doesn't sound very much, but when you start to think, well, Greggs have got 2,300 outlets, Costa Coffee have got over 2,000 outlets, McDonald's have got, all of a sudden there's a lot of money there sloshing about that we can funnel into, really making a big difference to people's lives long term, but most importantly, that short term connection and that bit of kindness and compassion.
Yeah. So from a business perspective, then you started off with it as a charity, but I think you then set it up as a kick, didn't you, as a community interest company?
Yeah, it was interesting. We banged backwards and forwards with the Charity Commission about being able to, because there's lots of different ways you can set up a charity as well. And we were looking particularly at setting up something called a CIO, which was a charitable incorporated organization or something. Mm-hmm. And I think it's what like a lot of NHS trusts are as well, so that they can sort of almost do like a trading retail type operation. But they came back to us, and it's a bit like a planning application. You can either dig your heels in and they say no, or you can negotiate with them a little bit and find some common ground. And they came back to us and said, we can't allow you to set the Billy Chip up as a charitable incorporated organisation or a charity. And the main reason for that is we don't think the general public has the right level of skills or ability to determine whether or not someone they're giving the token to is in actual need, which I thought was a bit strange, because I'm thinking to myself, well, who's going to sleep rough or lie on a bit of cardboard in a high street in front of everyone to get a free cup of coffee?
Yeah. If
we were handing out £200,000 grants, I could understand where they were coming from.
Yeah.
So we then spent quite a bit of money on legal advice and decided that we would continue with the charity. We would set the charity up, but the charity would just disperse grants. Yeah. And what we would do, like you quite rightfully said, is we'd set ourselves up as a CIC, which is a community interest company, which for all intents and purposes really is, we're a limited company, but we have slightly different accounting procedures, slightly more onerous sort of reporting, and I guess more importantly, if you're you can set up by share, or you can set up by guarantor. And we chose to set up by share. And the reason for that was a bit like why I wanted to set up as a charity, was if we set up by share, you can actually pay a dividend, although through a CIC it's reduced, and the maximum dividend you can pay is 35% of your profit.
Right.
But my thinking was Dragon's Den. That's what I was thinking. Dragon's Den sprang to mind, and I'm thinking, do you know what? All of those people are just always looking in and out, aren't they? You know, what's my exit strategy on this? Yeah. How much money can I take from it? And I thought, if we set up by guarantor, no one's going to want to throw any money into this. Whereas if we set up through a share option, then at least we could potentially give them something back and also give them an exit strategy. But to be honest with you, it's not really made a jot of difference. Because we've not been able to get anyone to invest. but as time goes on, I think to myself, do you know what? We sort of made it this far. But I didn't. The reason why I wanted someone to invest really was because I wanted, and you get these guys, don't you, come on Dragon's Den and they go, oh, I'll give you I want £500,000 for 3% of this, that, and the other. And you think, Christ, they've massively overvalued that, or, you know, who on earth would ever invest in that type of thing? And then you get the other guy come on who sort of says, well, I'll give you pretty much all of my business, and I only, you know, and I'll give you 99% of my business for £1,000 investment. You think, whoa, he's undervalued that. But it's that understanding of what they can bring to the 1% of your business you've got left. Yeah. My father-in-law always used to, I won't use the words he said exactly, but he always used to say, you know, you're better off having a small percentage of something massive than a massive percentage of something small. Yeah. But what I wanted their knowledge and their connections. That was why I was looking for an angel investor. I was looking for someone who can come in, tell me what I needed to do, tell me where I needed to focus, and make this thing a success really rapidly. But obviously launching in the middle of a pandemic, it didn't matter who got involved. I don't think even if Richard Branson had invested, it was going to really change the scope and the direction of where we were going.
Yeah. And I'm sure one of the challenges as well was, how you've got to create two sides of the coin here, a little bit of the token, if we use that, haven't you? You've got to get the outlets that are prepared to stock it, to sell it, and you've also got to get the public to buy them and then to use them and get them out. So how do you manage to bring those two sides together at the same time? Because you need both, don't you?
I think we've just got something that Billy created, which is just simple. It's not overcomplicated. And I think the other great thing that we've got is, and they always say this, don't they? And I can say this because it wasn't my idea, but they always say the best ideas are the simplest ideas. And I think that's certainly the case with the Billy chip. And I think that so many people have had that conscious confliction in their mind. So it resonates with everyone. Everyone gets it. Where we've struggled is getting coffee shops to sign up to it, right? Because I never thought we would get, don't get me wrong, I wanted Greggs and McDonald's and all the rest of those sorts of people involved. Had a meeting early days with someone quite big in McDonald's, and I thank them because they were totally honest with me. And there's nothing better than someone telling you how it is, and someone that knows the situation. Because when you're setting up a business, and I've set up other businesses and I had other projects and things, it's your idea, so it's the best idea. Yes. And you're 100% behind it, and you totally believe it. And because you come across people that don't want to wee on your bonfire, they go, "Oh, that's great, but you know what? We can't do it for this BS reason."
So what did McDonald's say to you?
McDonald's said, "We will not get involved in this unless," and they rattled off some people, and I can't remember, let's just say, unless Burger King, KFC and Costa Coffee are doing it, then we'll be all over it, and it'll be like it was our idea to do it. And I was like, that's so refreshing. Thank you so much, because I don't need to waste my time with you now. I can close that box. I'm done. Yeah. I've spoken to many, many other organizations, which are sizable organizations, and you get the runaround. And you waste so much time and so much energy, and you're hanging on to, they dangle a carrot and you're hanging on to that little bit of hope. And it's difficult to know, because the impact of them saying yes is so fundamentally important and a game changer to your business. Like I said, we get Costa Coffee saying yes, you've overnight got access to 2,000 plus stores, and you're nationwide, and there's quite a lot of businesses in the market we're in that could do that for you. What I really liked about McDonald's was they were just totally upfront, and they just said, no, never going to happen. Yeah. And it's like, great, okay. I don't need to, I know where I'm at, and I don't need to waste my time with you guys. I'll go off and waste my time over here, or try and be more productive in this way or that way. So that I was very grateful for. I think as well, what's difficult at the moment is, and I think 2023 is going to be different. I really do. I'm really positive about 2023. I think going through the pandemic and everything that people have gone through, people don't know what way to turn. People don't know if they want to be this, or if they want to be that, or if they're going to do this, or if they're going to do that. And there's just so much uncertainty that there's a massive lack of commitment everyone over the last 2 years is sat on the fence about everything, and you just speak to people in business and they're like, yeah, totally. And we've seen a big change on the high street as well. Online shopping, so many people that were never going to do online shopping. They were so against it. I'm never going to have a digital bank account. I'm never going to be contactless. I'm never going to buy my shopping. I'm going to support my local shop, which is now closed. And I'm not allowed out. So what are you going to do now?
So, to how many you've got Greg's, I think, on board, haven't you? What other outlets have you got on board?
So we focus very much on independence because after having that conversation with McDonald's and also understanding that if a big boy did turn around to us tomorrow and said, right, let's roll this out nationwide, we'd be, like a rabbit in the headlights. Yeah. We wouldn't really know which way to turn. So, and you have to, in business, you have to kiss a few, frogs before you find a prince. And you also have to make those mistakes and you have to do things and realize why it's not working and invest time in understanding where it's not. Because I just thought the minute we put Billy Chip out there, it's such a brilliant idea. Every coffee shop's going to sign up. So we have to have a really simple, rapid way of being able to deploy it. So we'll have an app because everyone likes app. Everyone understands an app. They're simple to use. That's the way to go. And it allows you nowadays to automate so much of a process, which means you don't need the staff, which means the limited amount of funding we get, if we can invest it into technology, we're going to get a better bang for our buck. But what I didn't realize was there's an old saying in there about wearing out shoe leather, going around knocking on doors. And I didn't realize that through operating through independence, I think one of our biggest failings has been to not look after those accounts properly. Right. I'm thinking that Billy Chip's got enough marketing behind it. It's a good enough idea. If people are introduced to it and they can see that they can buy it in their coffee shop, it's just going to happen. It's going to be a thing. Yeah. But you need staff engagement. You need staff buy-in. And that's what's been a lesson I've learned, I think, from speaking to Greg's, because Greg said in a roundabout way, it doesn't matter how good this is, and it doesn't matter how supportive it is. If our staff don't engage with it and buy into it, we won't do it. Right. And I was a bit like, oh, okay, that's different. I thought these big corporate, PLCs had a board and the board said, this is how it's going to be and this is what you're going to do. And if you don't like it, go and get a job somewhere else, sort of thing. Mm. But I totally understand now where they're coming from, because having the staff buy into it is a complete game changer. And you can see that in the outlets where we have staff engagement and where we don't have staff engagement. And the impact it has on the sales of Billy Chips is really quite a surprise. But we don't have the resource to have an account manager type person going around doing the niceties, going in, making sure people's point of sales in the right place, making sure that the staff are aware of the scheme. And the other thing I didn't realize, because the food and beverage industry was not my marketplace, and nor was homelessness and charity. So at the ripe old age of 52, I've sort of come to something that I don't really know anything about the industry and how it works. And what I've recognized is they have such a rapid turnover of staff. They're either students, foreign students, foreign workers, minimum wage, they're short-term contracts. There's no real incentive for these people to invest themselves into these small independent businesses. The bloke that owns the coffee shop's always going to own the coffee shop, and he's either going to sell it when he wants to retire, or he might pass it on to the family. But someone who comes in and works in that environment hasn't got a long-term career, and they haven't got aspirations, I don't think, to have a long-term career in a coffee shop. So their investment into the Billy Chip is sporadic. You get one person that loves it, they leave because the coffee shop down the road's paying an extra 30 pence an hour, and they can have Saturdays off, so they're gone. The new person comes in. We're not representing Billy Chip, so the connection goes, and then you see the sales of the chips dwindle. So we've changed that, and Megan is now doing much more of an account management role, where she's doing a bit more training, a bit more hand-holding, a bit more of that sort of sales incentive type thing as well, telling customers, you can always tell a customer, hey, do you know about the Billy Chip that we do? And it's surprising how you see the curve ramp up, where people mention the Billy Chip when you're buying a coffee. Do you know that we do the Billy Chip? Just totally changes the whole dynamic of that sales process, and normally turns out to be a positive one, where they go, that's a great idea, never even heard of it. And you think, what? How can you not heard it? We've got a sticker on the window, they got posters everywhere, we're massive on social media, but people are very much tunnel vision, aren't they? And I'm the same. I go in Starbucks or Costa or whatever, I want my latte, I'm looking at my phone, I'm not interested in anything else, I don't really want to talk to anyone, I'd rather get it out the machine in the corner. And that's just sort of what I've recognised as being, I guess, areas where we need to improve.
Yeah, so what's working for you then in terms of finding the coffee outlets?
Well, what's working for us? What's working for us now is looking at bigger organizations, because they can do that foot soldier work for us, because we don't have the funding to be able to do it. So I guess we've changed our direction. And a lot of this has been due to the fact that, people like Greg's want to do it, because no matter how much I want Greg's to do it, if Greg's don't want to do it, that's not going to change. So the fact that those businesses recognize their corporate social responsibility and recognize that this is something that their customers are engaged with has allowed us to look at how we sort of go to market. And rather than us focusing on small independent businesses, looking now, I think now we've got a few years behind us and we've got, 100 outlets doing it. The business model works. People are still engaged with it. People still want it. It's a circulatory business model. It's now time for us to step up and get involved with the big boys, because they'll take all that pain away that we have of account management and not having the funding to be able to do that. But what we've had to do is completely restructure how our business model or our account management system works, and move away from having an app and move more towards a management system for the outlets, which allows all the flexibility that these operators require, because it's so complicated. You get some franchise operators that just operate a brand. You get some franchise operators that operate multiple brands. You get franchise operators that only have a license to operate in a specific, like, train station.
Yes.
Every catering outlet in there is owned and operated by them. So if I've got 5 outlets in a train station and they're all operated by one organization, our account management system needs to be able to fit their particular structure.
Okay.
That's something that you learn as you go along.
Yeah. All right. So what does success look like for you in 5 years' time?
We will be a global operation within 5 years' time. 5 years from now, we will be a global operation.
You say that with a high degree of certainty. What?
People want it. People want it. We just need to go through we need to just go through the journey, small scale of understanding all the nuances, and also being adaptive to different regions, different territories, different currencies. We recognise that just from going to London. £2 chip works everywhere really well, apart from London, because it's not a high enough value. And what's weird is it's not a high enough value to encourage people to buy it. It's that thing where if something's too cheap, it can't be real type of thing. Yeah. And because it's £2, that's not reflective of a cup of coffee in London. It's not as well received.
Yeah.
And you do some market research, and if it was £3, more people would buy it than if it's £2. And you think, how can that be right? But facts and figures don't lie, do they? So, okay. And we've had so many. We get at least once a month, and I am not exaggerating, at least once a month, we have a foreign interest contact us about, can we roll this scheme out in their area? And that might be a business, it might be a charity, it might be a community organization, it might be an international charitable group. But there's so much we can do with it. Every charity shop in the UK should be redeeming Billy Chips, certainly all the homeless charities, because there's no reason why, if they're a homeless charity, they're set up, their net beneficiary is someone who's homeless. So why would you not accept Billy Chips in redemption for clothing, shoes, books? Give these people back some empowerment, some independence, some decision-making. It was really interesting because it was someone quite high up in the police force said one of the biggest failings of the charities that support homeless people and the ways in which local authorities are structured to support them is spoon feeding. And the more you spoon feed these people, the less independent they are and the more difficult it is for them to transition back into a normal life.
Yeah.
But I guess we're disruptors, and you can't do it overnight. No. I've got all the drive and energy to do it. I'm getting all the right signals from the people that we're supporting. The key thing is rough sleepers and homeless people really like the Billy Chip. They say it's degrading to beg for money, and if someone gives you something, it completely changes your day. It completely changes your outlook on society and how you're perceived, and it's really beneficial for your mental health. And to be able to have, you and I are sat here in our centrally heated offices. Neither of us are hungry or thirsty, and to be in a position where you don't have access to those basic things, let alone a choice of what you want and when you want it, the power of that is very, very difficult to understand unless you sit down on the pavement with someone and really engage with them and understand the impact that little blue token has.
Brilliant.
It's amazing.
It's a really good way to end on. Before we do end, though, I'd like to just ask you if you were to go back to maybe when you were setting Billy Chip up, what would you have done differently with hindsight? What's something you would do differently?
Not left my job. I don't know. It's a really good question, and it's one of those things that sort of changes all the time as you learn more. You think, "Gosh, if only I'd read that book, if only I was more aware of that, if only." I think the one thing I would have done is have more faith in it and more confidence in it, and taken things not necessarily slower, but would have taken things perhaps less, got less wound up by people and organizations that don't give you the feedback. That's one thing there's been a frustration through this, is getting honest feedback. And I didn't think that would be something that was so difficult. But I think also looking at it from a wider perspective, because of where the Billy Chips come from, I think people who don't like it or don't want to support it don't want to share that because I'm a grieving father.
Right.
I've got my grieving father hat on here, and then over here I've got my CEO hat on and trying to make a difference. And I don't care what people think about it, because it doesn't matter what you think. It's all positive feedback.
Okay. Very good. Excellent. Good. So it's been absolutely fascinating. I love what you're doing. If people listening to this would like to know more, to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that? www.billychip.com. We're all contactable through there. There's a raft of information. People can donate on there. People can sign up to operate the Billy Chip, find out a bit more about what we're doing. We're very fortunate that Billy's best friend works for us and Billy's sister works for us, and we've got an apprentice who's 20 years old who does all our social media. So although I'm an old git, we've got a really young heart, and we've got a great enthusiasm and drive to do things differently and innovatively, and I think we're set for a great future. Fantastic. Well, I wish you all the best in achieving that great future. And thank you very much for being my guest on ScaleUp Radio today, Jon.
Thanks very much, Kevin, for the opportunity. It's been great.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion. And if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.